Yeah. All right. It's taken me a bit too long to get to this video. I'm trying to re-evaluate what it is that I'm doing and how I'm doing it, because I'm in my second year of doing this Road to Infinity. End of August, beginning of September that would mark 2 years completed of doing this. I think it's that I'm kind of losing a bit of why I'm doing this or for whom I'm doing this. Of course, I want to share with you as much as I can and hopefully inspire you, but that the core purpose of why I started doing this was to have myself be inspired by myself, because practicing is something that you most likely will be doing most of the time on your own. When it comes to practicing and owning your skills and taking those steps towards finding out your true potential, most of that is probably gonna happen on your own. So creating these videos was a decision that I made for myself to keep myself going and keep myself accountable. I thought if I would make a video with a certain consistency, it would keep me in check, because I would struggle with myself if I wouldn't be able to keep up with what I had decided. And that is what happens once in a while. Like when I fall out of my rhythm or fall out of this consistency or these time windows that I've set for myself to then upload these videos, it bothers me. Even though nobody actually might care, but I do, and that is something I have mixed feelings about it, because a part of me is like, I'm happy that I have this side of me, because then since I've been going on for so long, it's gonna nag me. It's gonna be like a voice where I'm like, don't lose, everything that you've built up until now, this habit, don't lose it. And another side of me is just wanting to be more relaxed, because of course, because of this, I then put a lot of pressure on myself, because I then expect myself to get these things done. And then when I don't follow up on a certain deadline that I have set for myself, nobody else, I have set it for myself, then I get so disappointed, or like it becomes like this, like now I have to, versus what it was planned to be was like, I want to do this, let's go. So it's a fine line that I constantly balance between, and lately it's been falling more on the like pressure side. So again, I'm reevaluating how to do these videos, and I'm gonna continue the way I'm doing until probably the end of this Road 36 to Infinity, and then from the next chapter, because yes, I am planning on continuing. When I complete 2 years, it's literally just a beginning, and I doubt that I'll see like the fruits of my labor until maybe like 5 years down the road to Infinity. What I'm thinking of doing now is to kind of do a 2-in-1. What I had said in my previous video was to kind of like talk about my trip to Japan, and I want to do that within this art of practice segment, because what's part of the practice is to find a way to take your practice and take it with you wherever you are. Because when we practice, we might have a space that is the ideal space for us, or where we are comfortable. But the moment we have to then travel, whether it's to go on a vacation, whether it's going to an event, it often becomes a struggle, an obstacle to continue your practice. What I want for myself and also for you is to find a way to modify your practice so that the traveling doesn't become an excuse or an obstacle to get your practice done. I went to Japan for, I think it was about 7 weeks. Since I started this whole practice, I think it's the longest I've been like away from home. And this meant already a mental preparation, at least for me, because I knew that my trip to Japan was coming up. That was something that I was constantly thinking about. Okay, I'm gonna be away for 7 weeks, amazing, but I don't want to lose track of my practice. I don't want to lose the routine. I was already trying to like, okay, how am I going to do this? Just preparing myself mentally, setting up for like worst case scenarios, and something that I've shared before in a video somewhere, is that my practice that I have an ideal version. Version A, plan A. This is how I want to practice daily. And then I've made a plan B for if I don't have so much time, creating a version that, okay, worst case scenario, I don't have the time, I don't have the space. What can I do and how do I want to practice? So I want to talk about some of the limitations, some of the possibilities, and I want to end the video with sharing some of the little things that I liked about Japan that's very specific for Japan, and then some things to be aware of if you do travel to Japan. I rarely do this, but I'm gonna ask of you, if you do like these videos, please give it a thumbs up. I'm hoping that these videos will reach to more people. So please take a minute or a few seconds actually, to just like this video, and then we continue. The first thing that I wanted to talk about as a limitation is space. Being on the road as I varied my accommodation between staying with friends and also staying at hostels. With those came certain limitations. First of all, in both places, I'm sharing a space with more people than just myself. So just the fact that I'm not at my home, I am also in a place where I need to adapt, taking consideration that there are more people around me and I can't do whatever I want the way I want it, whenever I want it. So having a limited space or a space with limitations is, you can always work around it, right? So if I stay with friends, I might have been given a room where I could stay and have my space, and then I could just do my practice. No matter the size of the room, I could get the practice done. Obviously, I just had to adapt. I had to adapt in a sense of when I would practice. People have their rhythms, and I didn't want to be practicing in the middle of the night and when people were sleeping, and if it was with the risk of making too much noise and bothering people. In another situation, I had this space, like I could use the living room to do my practice. In this space, I would have distractions also. So, you know, like if it's in the living room, then people are living their lives. If it's a family, they would have kids that would be running around, might be moving obstacle around you, because kids are busy being kids. And I'm just another obstacle in their space. Of course, I could have also decided not to do anything, but the goal here was to keep the practice going. When staying at a hostel, I had very, very limited space. I mean, in one of the hostels, I literally had, between the bunk beds, I had space, which was not much. I also had the common area or outside the bathrooms, the hallway, where I could move, where there was a little bit more space, but it was also crowded because there was always traffic. There was always either people going to the bathroom or people coming and going. Everything comes down to also time. So there are certain times where there's less rush hour, perhaps in the middle of the day somewhere where most of the people at a hostel has left to explore the city, and then you maybe sacrifice some of that time to then do the practice. Or very, very early where most of the people would be sleeping, and also be okay with the fact that there were people moving around. And also this was a moment where I couldn't be shy with my practice, because I often think of like, you know, that I'm the weird one doing practice here, and everybody else might be just looking at me. But not caring is also a nice skill or a nice quality that might come out of, you know, practicing at different places, to not be so self-conscious about it. You come second and kind of trying to make the practice work in whatever way is possible. In my case, I would most of the times film my practice, which also made it hard because I didn't want to film, and then in case there were people around that might not be that might not want to be on film, and just finding like the right place to place the camera. This for me became such an obstacle. Okay, it took extra time and effort to just, okay, where do I place the camera? And the space might not even allow me to properly catch my whole practice. Again, this is like a teeny tiny detail, doesn't have to be a problem because I've now just chosen to try to record each and every practice that I do, but if I don't do that, then that's one thing that is out of the limitation. Something that I just wanted to mention real quick, so for people that enter battles, that is interesting. It doesn't have to be a limitation. I just put it here because in different parts of the world, we have different likes and dislikes. So if you, for example, enter a battle in, let's say now in Asia or in Japan, there might be things that they value more than in, let's say, Europe. So Europe and Asia might have different values that they look at when judging or when picking people for from a pre-selection and so on. So it's something to be aware of, and to enter these spaces, having come from like that different place, it might at first be harder maybe to pass a pre-selection. If you somewhere else pass 9 out of 10 times, maybe then in this other region it's 3 out of 10 times. But it doesn't mean that your dance is not good enough, or that it's just like it might be different values. And then what it can create is a challenge to maybe also understand what it is that is being valued differently, and how can you grow out of this. Yeah, that was something that I very much felt when I was in Japan, that in Europe I just do my do, and I feel like one out of many people. Oh, in Japan I would very clearly feel that I moved different, or that I valued certain things differently. Nothing is better or worse, it's just different. But experiencing these different values open up for conversations to understand, and also just observation. Moving on to the possibilities. So if you're traveling, know that in Tokyo at least, you can rent a studio. I found so many places where that was possible, and I did that with friends, where they most of the times made the reservation. But having that as a possibility is always nice. As you are in Japan, you may meet people, and then if you have people that you really connect with, maybe check if a studio can be rented, and then pay, and then go and practice for an hour or two, depending on what's available. But that's always an option. In Japan, I felt very accessible in that a lot of people did this to practice with friends. They would go rent a studio, which wasn't expensive. I don't remember now what it ended up being, but from the few times that I did book a studio with a friend, sharing it wasn't that bad for, an hour or 2 hours. I didn't do it in Japan, but I know other people that did, and that was to go to a gym, pay for a day, maybe have one day of the week where you go to a gym and you pay access to this, to be there for one day and just do maybe the full practice, and also using some of the equipments. And I think it's just a nice thing you could always do. I didn't do it, however, but I know that there were some people I met that did that. Being on the road, regarding how you do with your physical practice, whether you get to do the whole thing, whether you had to really adapt it so that it's a bare minimum version of it, however you manage it in your spaces. When traveling, it also opens up for me to direct my focus to the other part of my practice, which is more maybe the mindful or the theoretical part. It gives me time to focus on reading, on like planning, just thinking about my practice, and focusing on things that can be done when I'm on the road, so that I don't have to stop. Like the practice can always keep going, and just also being in a different space, in a different country, to also talk to other people to see what they view or how they view on practice and dance, and like it might spark inspiration for your own practice, because maybe in a space where you are mainly, there's a similar maybe thought process. But going across the ocean to a different part of the world, even though you might be doing this similar things, is perhaps a different approach. So being away and being on the road creates these spaces to just have conversations. There might be a lot of similarities, there might be differences. Being in Japan, within say Tokyo, big city, so much happening, so many events going on, like also club nights or jams. If you start meeting people and having them recommend something, then you're definitely gonna have a lot to do. Something that it was also is very, very different from at least Sweden, and I think most of Europe, because I haven't felt its presence as much, but it's showcases. In Japan, they are very good at and they enjoy doing showcases. Like for example, House Dance Crossing is a big event focused on house dance only and filled with a lot of different groups from different parts of Asia, mostly Japan, presenting showcases. And it was amazing. I loved seeing them, and it was so clear that this is a big part of the culture in Japan because, for example, with House Dance Crossing, it was not a competition. Because the only other time I've seen like a lot of people gather to present their showcases has been at showcase competitions. But here it was just a space to share. And that was amazing. There was no prize at the end of the day. It was just different groups and a lot of groups. I also went to, I think there were 2 or 3 like club nights or club events where somewhere in the middle of the night, a duo or a trio or one person, a solo, would present the showcase. And that would maybe last for half an hour, a little bit more, and then that was done, and then back to party. And what I loved is that it was so much support. Felt like it was such a nice little addition to all these events where like people just were there socializing and shared with each other. I went to at least one battle that was Re-Race. That's an event hosted by, organized by Hiro-san. And this event literally starts at midnight. For me, this was a first time experiencing something like this, and it was dope. It's also a house battle, 1 versus 1, a very different experience to go to an event that starts at the middle of the night, literally, and then you're there, and then you step out of the event at maybe 5 in the morning, you know, sun is rising, and then you're heading home, like after a club night, but you went to a battle. From what I've heard from other people, it's not so uncommon that it might happen in the middle of the night. And this event was also on a Thursday. So it was not in the middle of the night during a weekend. It was a Thursday night. And yeah, so there can be things happening any time of the day at any day of the week. I think I ended up entering 3 battles. All of these battles had a cypher pre-selection. The biggest version of this was at the event called Dance Alive. There's a lot of people participating. The amount of judges were 4, and what they did was that they had 4 different ciphers. Then the judge and each circle picked X amount of dancers that would then pass on to the next round, and then they would switch, and then it was the next 4 ciphers. So I think they had like 8 or 12 of these ciphers. The people that got picked then made a new cipher. Then a certain amount of people got picked to go to the next round. And like so, they filtered all of the participants to then have the top, I don't know if it was then the top 16. Interesting way of doing a pre-selection, because normally at the events I've been to, it's been all of the judges have then together selected X amount of dancers that would then go on to the main event. But here you have 4 different judges with 4 different values who then within their ciphers picked who they felt should pass. Maybe with one judge, your dance fits their values, and in a different cipher with a different judge, it might not fit. So yeah, I don't know what to say about it. Apart from like that's a way that the pre-selections were done. It went really fast though. So if anything, it's a way to use the time efficiently and then to move on. Is it fair? I don't know. You tell me. That was basically what I wanted to share real quick about being on the road, first of all, but also how it was for me being in Japan. I mean, I've had an interest in Japan for like so many years. I'm a big fan of anime. big fan of the language, culture. Being there and getting to still do my practice and participate in, within the community, enter battles, go to events, talk to dancers. It was just a very, very beautiful experience. If you haven't been to Japan, I can definitely recommend to go. So if there's anyone there watching that has been to Japan, has experienced the dance culture over there, let me know, how was it for you? What were some of the ups and what were some of the downs? Yeah, I'm just curious to hear about other people's experiences, because for me, I had an amazing time. I will go back, that's for sure. So before we go into the last part, please consider giving this video a thumbs up. So what are like the little things that I really liked about Japan? I really enjoyed the convenience stores. I really like those, the kombini. So you have 3 big chains, which is the 7-Eleven, Family Mart, and Lawson. These are everywhere and they're open all night. Some of them, 7-Eleven. If you're in Japan, passing by a convenience store is a must, because there's so many like nice things that they have for a good price. A lot of food, like snacks that you can with snacks I mean like small like onigiris, so like these like rice ball wrapped in seaweed, and like a lot of lunch boxes like these bentos. You just want to try everything. Of course, for me being vegan, I had like certain limitations, but there was so much. Convenience stores, love them. Another thing that I really like about Japan, there are toilets everywhere within the public transport. So whenever you take the train, the metro to go to wherever you need to go, at every station, yes, I think at every station, there will be bathrooms and they are clean. I didn't pass by any toilet that was nasty, like to the point where like I didn't want to go to the bathroom. Every single one was nice to visit. That's something that clearly is a big difference from wherever I've been before, because it made an impression. Something that I liked about Tokyo is that there's so many places you can go that is just nice to hang out in. Of course, big city, and like, it's not that I didn't expect that, but a place that really stuck with me was like, so in the Shibuya area, it's called the Miyashita Park. So basically it was like a park on the rooftop where they had like skate parks, they had like these bouldering walls and like cafes, and it was just a nice place to hang out in. And I also saw people like dancing and like recording themselves and like having their little session. So I felt like it was a very nice space where you just could go and potentially have your own little practice session there. Super dope. So Miyashita Park, definitely something I would recommend you to check out if you're in Tokyo. And again, this is probably one out of many places that it's just nice to be in. What I really also liked about Japan, and Tokyo in this case, is the order within all of the chaos. Like, there's so much happening in Japan, or in Tokyo, so much happening, so much like stimulus for your eyes. To be in a city with so many people, but never feeling it being so chaotic. Like, there was still order, like people would stand in line. Like, whereas an experience I've had several times, that in Europe, like when you get off the trains, for example, or the metro, and you're heading towards the escalator, that everybody has this, they're cramming in to like go out. But in Tokyo, I never experienced people like shoving or like pushing around to just go somewhere. It's like people would come and then everybody would just organize and stand in line and then go out. It's like a whole ecosystem where everybody, like, they just know how to navigate between each other. So at all the different crossroads, or like just overall, so many people walking around, but I rarely see people like clashing into each other or bump into each other. Everything has worked so smoothly. I never felt stressed being in Tokyo. It just never felt chaotic in a way. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that's something I liked. And the last thing that I really, really liked about Japan is the safety. I've never experienced a place where I could go, let's say to a coffee place, sit down, leave all my stuff, and mind you that my stuff might be on a second floor, and then I would go down to the first floor, make an order of whatever I wanted, to then go up and sit down, and with nobody having touched my stuff or like anything being like missing. And I've heard so many stories of like almost ridiculous how people are so trusting each other, but it's like, again, just showing how safe it is in Japan or in Tokyo. But I'm assuming that this goes all over Japan, but until proven otherwise, we'll say Japan. Something in terms of then safeties, I really like that I would go to a coffee place, for example, and there might be a person or two that are sleeping, taking a nap, nobody bothering them, and this was just very normal. I just like that. I've had so many times where you're like, you might be in the city and you're like, oh, okay, I need to go from here to the next thing, but I'm so tired, I want to take a nap. Then maybe you have to plan to go home to do so, and then it's just a lot. But here, you could go, sit at a coffee place, take a nap, short one, go up, maybe get a coffee, go on with your day or night. So yeah, the safety, a big, big plus. But then, that's in Japan. When you then go anywhere else, be safe. And the last thing I want to say, when it comes to Japan, if you're planning on going to Japan, which I really hope that you are, some things to be aware of that I learned by being there, that I would say on top of my list, is to read the space. Most likely this will happen if you're with other people, but if you're like talking, you're having your conversations, super nice, and you step on the metro or the train, to then be aware of that space, that you're not alone, and that most of the people there they don't necessarily talk to each other. Like on the public transport, it's most of the time it's quiet. If you hear anybody talking, that's most likely somebody from outside of the country. So be mindful of the people around you, and that if you do enter a space where you might just notice that it is actually quiet, then to maybe pause whatever conversation you're having or speak very softly until you get off that public transport. And this also goes with elevators, which I had to learn by doing, where like I was with a friend, we were talking, or I was talking to the person, and then I just noticed how as soon as we entered an elevator, my friend got quiet. I just, oh, okay. I felt like it was not the space to talk in, and then we paused the conversation, stepped out of the elevator, and then we continued. So be mindful of your spaces. Read the space. So that was a little bit of my experience in Japan, taking my practice on the road, and some things that I liked about Japan. And there's probably more, there's definitely more I could share about it, but it's a lot. So if you're ever going to Japan and you have any questions, you can always ask, write in the comments below. I do definitely recommend going to Japan. It's a beautiful place, beautiful country, amazing people, food, yeah, you name it. This is another video of Art of Practice, and my name is Kaide. I hope that you're enjoying your practice and that you're curious about finding out what your true potential is, and I'll see you in our next video.